I was running a microfiber cloth over the pristine chrome of my 1967 Shelby Mustang GT 500 when I heard car doors slam outside my garage. The sound made my stomach drop because I recognized the aggressive way my father shut his door. Through the tinted windows of my climate-controlled sanctuary, I could see my parents marching toward my house with my sister Amanda trailing behind them, like she owned the place. My father's face wore that expression I remembered from childhood punishments, and my mother clutched her purse like a weapon. Amanda had this smirk that made my blood run cold. Something terrible was about to happen to my world. The automatic garage door groaned upward as I hit the button, revealing my collection in all its glory. 14 pristine automobiles arranged in perfect rows, each one representing years of sacrifice and smart financial decisions. My 2019 Ferrari 488 Pista gleamed under the LED lighting system. The 1969 Dodge Charger R/T sat next to a 2020 Lamborghini Huracan Evo. Every surface sparkled. Every engine had been meticulously maintained, and every title sat safely in my fireproof safe upstairs. Dad walked straight to the center of my garage, without acknowledging the millions of dollars worth of automotive perfection surrounding him. Mom stood beside him with her arms crossed, and Amanda leaned against my 1970 Chevelle SS like she belonged there. The disrespect made my jaw clench. "Lincoln," Dad began, his voice carrying that tone he used when he meant business. "We need to talk about your priorities." I set down the microfiber cloth and faced my family, though I already knew this conversation would change everything between us. "What about my priorities? Your sister needs a house." Mom jumped in, her voice shaking with what I assumed was righteous anger. "She has been looking at a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial on Maple Street, and the asking price is $300,000. Amanda pushed herself off my Chevelle and walked over with that entitled stride she had perfected over her 28 years of existence. "It has granite countertops, Lincoln, and a 2-car garage where I could actually park normal vehicles instead of these expensive toys." The word toys hit me like a physical blow. These automobiles represented 8 years of working 60-hour weeks as a software consultant. Every vacation I never took, every restaurant meal I skipped, every date I turned down because I was saving money for the next addition to my collection. These machines were my passion, my investment portfolio, and my legacy, all rolled into gleaming metal and purring engines. "I can loan you some money for a down payment," I offered, hoping to find middle ground. "Maybe 10 or 15,000 to get you started." Dad shook his head firmly. "Amanda needs the full amount, cash. No mortgage payments she cannot afford." "Then she needs to get a job," I replied, immediately regretting the harshness in my voice. Amanda's face twisted with indignation. "I have been trying to find work for 2 years, Lincoln. The job market is impossible right now. I need stability first, then I can focus on building a career." Mom stepped closer, her eyes brimming with tears that I suspected were more manipulative than genuine. "Your sister is family, Lincoln. She needs our help, and you are the only one with the resources to provide it." "So you want me to sell my entire collection?" The question came out as barely more than a whisper. $1.8 million, Dad stated matter-of-factly. That amount would buy Amanda her house and leave her with enough money to live comfortably while she finds employment. I looked around at my collection, each vehicle holding memories of the moment I first saw it, the negotiation process, the careful transport home, the hours spent maintaining every detail to perfection. My 1963 Corvette split window had taken me 3 years to find in the right condition. The 2018 McLaren 720S represented the biggest financial risk I had ever taken, buying it with money I had earned from my most successful consulting contract. "These cars are not just sitting here collecting dust," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "They appreciate in value. They are investments." "Investments do not matter when family is in need," Mom replied, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Amanda moved closer, and I could see the calculation in her expression. She had already spent the money in her mind. "Lincoln, I have sacrificed so much for this family over the years. Remember when I helped take care of Grandma Dorothy when she had pneumonia? Remember when I drove Mom to all her doctor appointments after her surgery?" The guilt trip felt familiar, because Amanda had perfected this technique over decades of getting what she wanted from our parents. But this time felt different. This time they were asking me to destroy everything I had built for myself. What if I say no? I asked, though I feared I already knew the answer. Dad's expression hardened into something I had never seen directed at me before. Then you are no longer part of this family. We raised you with values about helping those in need. And if you choose material possessions over your sister's well-being, then we have failed as parents. The ultimatum hung in the air like toxic smoke. Choose Amanda or lose my family forever. Choose my life's passion or accept exile from the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. Amanda stepped forward with a smile that chilled me to the bone. I already put a deposit down on the house, Lincoln. I told them my brother would have the money transferred by next Friday. 3 days after that devastating garage confrontation, I discovered something that made my blood boil. I was lying in bed at 2 a.m, unable to sleep, scrolling through social media to distract myself from the family crisis, when I stumbled across Amanda's Instagram account. She had made a post 6 hours earlier with photos of my entire car collection. The caption read, "Finally convinced my brother to do right by family. All these beautiful cars going up for sale soon to help me get my dream house. Brother is finally putting family first where it belongs. Send me a DM if interested in any of these beauties." My hands shook as I screenshot every single post. She had taken detailed photos of each vehicle, listing estimated values, and even providing close-ups of the interiors. Comments flooded the post from people asking about specific cars, requesting more information, and offering to come look at them in person. But the worst part came when I checked her direct messages, which she had apparently forgotten to make private. Multiple people had already sent her deposits through Venmo. 5,000 here, 10,000 there. Amanda was collecting money from strangers for cars she did not own and had no legal right to sell. My Ferrari had 3 serious inquiries with people ready to fly in from other states. My Shelby Mustang had someone offering full asking price sight unseen. Amanda was treating my life's work like a garage sale, and she was already spending money that belonged to people who thought they were buying legitimate vehicles. I threw off the covers and started pacing around my bedroom, fury building with every step. This was not just family pressure anymore. This was fraud. Amanda was committing actual crimes using my property, and she felt so confident that our parents would force me to comply that she was advertising my cars like they already belonged to her. The decision crystallized in that moment. I grabbed my phone and called Jake Morrison, a guy I had met at car shows who owned a vehicle transport company. Jake specialized in moving expensive automobiles for collectors who needed discretion and security. "Lincoln?" Jake's voice was groggy but alert. "Everything okay, man? It's 2:30 in the morning. I need to move my entire collection tonight," I said without preamble. "All 14 cars. Can you help me?" Jake was quiet for a moment, probably processing the urgency in my voice. "That's a big job. Where are we moving them to? I need somewhere safe, climate-controlled, somewhere my family cannot find them." "I know a guy," Jake said, already sounding more awake. "Marcus Chen runs a specialty storage facility about 40 miles out in Riverside County. He caters to collectors who need maximum security, military-grade locks, surveillance, the whole 9 yards. Can you reach him tonight?" Marcus is a night owl. "Let me make some calls." 20 minutes later, Jake called back with good news. Marcus had space available and could accommodate all 14 vehicles immediately. The facility was designed specifically for high-value automobile storage, with individual climate-controlled bays and 24-hour security monitoring. Jake arrived at my house with 2 transport trailers and a crew of 3 experienced drivers at 4 in the morning. These guys moved million-dollar cars for a living, and they treated each vehicle like precious art. They brought specialized ramps, soft tie-downs, and protective covers to ensure no damage during transport. Loading the cars felt like evacuating my children from a burning building. Each vehicle had to be carefully positioned, secured with multiple anchor points, and covered to protect the paint during transport. My Lamborghini went on first, followed by the McLaren. The vintage vehicles required extra care because their older mechanical systems were more sensitive to movement and vibration. I drove my daily driver, a practical Honda Accord, behind the convoy as we made our way through empty highways toward the storage facility. Dawn was breaking over the mountains as we arrived at a nondescript industrial complex surrounded by high fences and security cameras. Marcus greeted us at the gate, a thin man in his 50s with grease-stained hands and eyes that missed nothing. His facility looked like a fortress from the outside, but inside, it was a car lover's paradise. Individual storage bays lined both sides of a wide central corridor, each one climate-controlled and equipped with its own security system. "Your cars will be safe here," Marcus assured me as we walked through the facility. "I have clients who store vehicles worth more than small countries. Nobody gets access without your explicit permission, and my security system would make Fort Knox jealous." Unloading the cars took another 3 hours, but watching each vehicle settle into its new temporary home brought me a sense of relief I had not expected. They were safe from my family's manipulation, protected from Amanda's fraudulent schemes, and secure until I could figure out how to navigate this nightmare. I drove home as the sun climbed higher, exhausted but determined. My garage stood empty except for oil stains on the concrete floor, tire marks leading to the door, and the faint smell of automotive passion that had once filled the space. At 9 in the morning, Amanda arrived with a man in an expensive suit who I assumed was one of her potential buyers. I watched from my kitchen window as she used the garage door opener remote our parents had given her years ago. The door rolled up to reveal nothing but empty space. Amanda's scream of rage could have shattered glass. She stood in the middle of my garage, turning in circles, her potential buyer looking confused and increasingly suspicious. Within minutes, she was on her phone screaming at someone, probably our parents, demanding to know where the cars had gone. I waited exactly 10 minutes before walking out to the garage, coffee cup in hand, acting as calm as humanly possible. "Where are my cars?" Amanda shrieked, her face red with fury and panic. "Your cars?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "I think you mean my cars, and they are somewhere safe." "You cannot do this," she yelled. "I already collected deposits from people. I have to deliver these cars." "That sounds like a you problem," I replied, taking a sip of coffee. "I never gave you permission to sell anything." The man in the suit cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Ma'am, if you do not actually own these vehicles, I think there may be some legal issues here." Amanda spun toward him with desperation in her eyes. No, it's fine. My brother is just being difficult. The cars will be back." But the man was already walking away, shaking his head and muttering something about fraud investigations. Amanda turned back to me with tears streaming down her face. But these were tears of rage rather than sadness. "Mom and Dad are going to kill you," she threatened. "Probably," I agreed. "But at least my cars will still exist when they do." The next week turned into a siege. My phone rang constantly with calls from family members, each one trying a different angle to convince me to reveal the location of my automobiles. Mom called crying about family unity. Dad called with legal threats. Amanda sent text messages that alternated between begging and promising revenge. My cousin Bradley called to lecture me about family responsibility. Aunt Susan left voicemails about disappointing our deceased grandfather who had valued family above everything. Uncle Rich showed up at my office to corner me during lunch, telling me I was being selfish and unreasonable. The worst part was watching how effectively Amanda had poisoned the entire extended family against me. She attended every family gathering with tearful stories about my cruelty and selfishness. According to her version of events, I was a heartless millionaire who refused to help his desperate sister buy a modest home. At my nephew's birthday party, I overheard my teenage niece telling her friends that Uncle Lincoln was the mean one who would not help Aunt Amanda. Even the kids had been turned against me, with carefully crafted lies about my character and motivations. I started questioning my own judgment. Was I being unreasonable? Was family obligation more important than personal boundaries? Maybe I should just sell a few cars and help Amanda with a down payment. Maybe keeping the entire collection was selfish when my sister needed help. But then I made a discovery that changed everything. I was cleaning out my kitchen junk drawer, procrastinating on returning family phone calls, when I found a manila envelope that had been left behind during one of my parents' confrontational visits. Inside were photocopied documents that made my stomach drop to the floor. Mortgage refinancing papers from First National Bank. My parents had taken out a second mortgage on their house 3 months ago, borrowing $200,000 against the equity they had built over 30 years of payments. Amanda was listed as a cosigner on the loan documents. My hands shook as I read through the paperwork. The money had already been dispersed into a checking account with both my parents' and Amanda's names on it. Bank statements showed systematic withdrawals over the past months, with Amanda's signature on most of the transaction records. I called the bank and spoke with the loan officer whose name appeared on the documents. After confirming my identity as their son, she was willing to discuss general information about the loan. Your parents were very clear about their intentions, the loan officer explained. They needed money to help their daughter with housing expenses, and they were confident that another family member would be providing additional funds to cover the full purchase price. Did they mention specific plans for repayment? They indicated that their son owned valuable assets that would be liquidated to satisfy the loan obligations. I hung up the phone feeling physically sick. This entire situation had been orchestrated months in advance. My parents had gambled their house on the assumption that they could force me to sell my car collection. They had put their retirement security at risk based on Amanda's promises that she could manipulate me into compliance. But the manipulation went even deeper than I had realized. When I confronted my parents about the mortgage documents, their responses revealed the full extent of Amanda's deception. Amanda needed our help, Mom said defensively when I showed up at their house with the paperwork. She has been struggling financially, and we could not stand by watching our daughter suffer. How exactly has she been struggling? I asked. She has not had a job in 2 years. What has she been living on? Dad shifted uncomfortably in his recliner. She has been doing odd jobs, helping neighbors with cleaning, pet sitting for friends. For 2 years? That pays enough to live on? Mom and Dad exchanged glances that told me they had been avoiding asking these questions themselves. Amanda explained that she needed startup money to establish herself properly, Mom said. Once she has a nice house in a good neighborhood, she can focus on building a real career. Did you ask her what happened to the $200,000 you borrowed? The silence stretched uncomfortably, as my parents realized they had never demanded accountability from Amanda for the money they had given her. They had simply handed over their financial security based on vague promises about future responsibility. She said she was investing it wisely while looking for the right property, Dad finally admitted. Show me the investment statements, I challenged. Another long silence. The next day, Amanda escalated her campaign in a way that crossed every line of professional dignity. She showed up at my office building during lunch hour and created a scene in the lobby that had security guards reaching for their radios. My brother's letting our family lose their house, she announced to everyone in the crowded atrium. He has millions of dollars in cars but will not help his unemployed sister buy a home. My coworkers who were grabbing lunch stopped to stare as Amanda continued her public meltdown. She had dressed in worn clothing and carried signs about family responsibility, turning my workplace into her personal protest venue. Lincoln Morrison in software development, she called out. He values cars more than family. He would rather see his sister homeless than sell one luxury vehicle. Building security approached Amanda, but she had positioned herself on public property just outside the main entrance. Technically, she was not trespassing, just publicly humiliating me in front of everyone I worked with professionally. My boss, Janet Williams, witnessed the entire spectacle from the elevator lobby. When I finally made it back to my desk, she called me into her office with an expression I had never seen before. Lincoln, I need to know that your personal situation is not going to continue affecting our workplace environment, she said carefully. Several clients witnessed what happened downstairs, and I have received questions about whether our employees are involved in family legal disputes. It's a misunderstanding that will be resolved soon, I promised, though I had no idea how. I hope so, Janet replied. Because if this kind of disruption continues, we may need to discuss whether this is the right professional environment for you. Driving home that evening, I realized that Amanda's campaign was systematically destroying every aspect of my life. She had turned my family against me, poisoned my extended relatives, and now threatened my career. But I also realized something else that strengthened my resolve. Amanda's desperation was revealing the depth of her deception. She was not just asking for help with a house. She was running from something bigger, and she needed my car collection money to solve problems that went far beyond housing. 2 weeks after Amanda's workplace stunt, I received a frantic phone call that made my heart race with panic. Marcus was calling from the storage facility, his usually calm voice tight with urgency. Lincoln, you need to get down here immediately, he said. Someone is trying to remove your vehicles, and they have documentation claiming legal authority. I was in my car and driving toward Riverside County before Marcus finished explaining the situation. According to him, a woman matching Amanda's description had arrived with 3 men in official-looking uniforms, claiming they were conducting a legal repossession of vehicles involved in a family court dispute. She had paperwork that looked legitimate at first glance, Marcus explained as I raced down the highway. Power of attorney documents, court orders, the whole 9 yards. But something felt off, so I called you before letting them take anything. Do not let them touch my cars, I said, pressing harder on the accelerator. I'm 20 minutes away. They're getting agitated about the delay, Marcus warned. The woman keeps insisting that she has legal authority and threatening to call police if I do not comply. When I arrived at the storage facility, I found Amanda standing in the parking lot with 3 men wearing matching uniforms from a company called Premier Vehicle Recovery Services. 2 large tow trucks were positioned near the entrance, and one of the men was already connecting chains to my Shelby Mustang. "Stop!" I shouted, jumping out of my car. "Get away from my vehicle!" Amanda turned toward me with a mixture of triumph and defiance on her face. "Lincoln, these gentlemen are here on legal business. I have court-ordered authority to reclaim family assets that are being hidden to avoid legitimate debts." I walked over to examine the paperwork she was waving around. The documents looked official, complete with legal letterhead and what appeared to be a judge's signature. But as I read more carefully, I realized the papers were sophisticated forgeries. "This power of attorney is fake," I told Marcus, pointing to several inconsistencies in the legal language. "Look at the date format. Look at the case number. This is not how real court documents are formatted." One of the uniformed men stepped forward aggressively. "Sir, we have been hired to perform a legal vehicle recovery. If you interfere with this process, you could be charged with obstruction." "Show me your business license," I demanded. "Show me your recovery agent certifications." The 3 men exchanged glances that confirmed my suspicions. These were not legitimate repossession agents. They were criminals Amanda had hired to steal my cars using fraudulent paperwork. "Marcus, call the police," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Amanda's composure cracked instantly. "No, Lincoln. We can work this out without involving law enforcement. These men are just here to help transport the vehicles to a neutral location where we can negotiate." "Negotiate what? These are my cars, and you hired thieves to steal them." The fake recovery agents were already disconnecting their equipment and moving toward their trucks. They had no intention of sticking around once real police became involved. Within minutes, they were driving away, leaving Amanda standing alone in the parking lot with her fraudulent paperwork. "How much did you pay them?" I asked as we waited for the sheriff's deputies to arrive. Amanda's shoulders sagged in defeat. $5,000. I told them it was a family dispute over inherited vehicles. "Where did you get $5,000 to hire fake repo men?" "I borrowed it from a friend," she said, but her eyes would not meet mine. The investigating deputies took our statements and examined Amanda's forged documents. Detective Sarah Rodriguez explained that vehicle theft using fraudulent paperwork was a serious felony, especially when the vehicles involved were worth millions of dollars. "Ma'am, you're looking at charges for attempted grand theft, fraud, and conspiracy," Detective Rodriguez told Amanda as she placed her in handcuffs. "The value of the vehicles you attempted to steal puts this in the highest category of felony charges." As Amanda was being loaded into the police cruiser, she finally dropped her victim act and showed her true nature. "You think you've won, Lincoln? This is just the beginning. I know people who can make your life hell. I know where you work, where you live, where you go for coffee every morning." The threats continued until the deputies drove away with her in custody. I stood in the storage facility parking lot feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. My sister had just been arrested for trying to steal from me, and she had revealed a side of herself that I never knew existed. My parents arrived at the police station within an hour to post Amanda's bail. When they called me later that evening, their voices carried a tone I had never heard before. It was the sound of parents realizing their child was not who they thought she was. "Lincoln, we had no idea she would do something like this," Mom said, her voice shaking with what sounded like genuine shock. "We never thought she would break the law. She hired criminals to steal my cars, Mom. She forged legal documents. This is not just family drama anymore." "We know," Dad admitted quietly. We are starting to see that maybe we do not know Amanda as well as we thought. The judge issued a restraining order preventing Amanda from coming within 500 feet of me, my property, or the storage facility. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe without looking over my shoulder for my sister's next attack. But I also felt deeply sad about the destruction of my family. Christmas dinners and birthday celebrations would never be the same. The trust we had built over decades had been shattered by Amanda's desperation and my parents' willingness to enable her destructive behavior. That night, I visited my cars in their secure storage bays. Each vehicle represented not just financial investment, but memories of better times when my family celebrated my successes instead of trying to tear them down. I ran my hands over the smooth paint of my Mustang and made a silent promise that I would never again allow anyone to use emotional manipulation to destroy what I had built through honest work and careful planning. 3 days after Amanda's arrest, I received a phone call that changed everything I thought I knew about my family situation. My grandmother Dorothy was calling from her assisted living facility, and her voice carried a confusion and fear that made my chest tighten with concern. "Lincoln, dear, I need to ask you about something that has been bothering me," she said in the careful voice she used when discussing difficult topics. "I went to check my savings account yesterday, and there seems to be some money missing." I drove immediately to Sunset Manor Assisted Living, where Grandma Dorothy and Grandpa Frank had been residents for the past 2 years. They had chosen the facility specifically because it allowed them to maintain independence while having access to medical care and social activities. Grandma greeted me in the lobby with a manila folder full of bank statements and a worried expression that broke my heart. At 83, she remained sharp and observant, which made her financial concerns all the more credible. "I balance my checkbook every month," she explained as we sat in the quiet corner of the resident lounge. "But these past 18 months, there have been withdrawals I did not authorize." She handed me bank statements that told a devastating story. Systematic withdrawals of varying amounts, ranging from $500 to $5,000, all signed with authorization from someone listed as Dorothy's designated caregiver and financial assistant. "Who is your designated caregiver?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. "Amanda volunteered to help me manage my finances when we moved here," Grandma explained. "She said it would be easier if she could handle bank transactions when I was not feeling well or when the weather was bad." I studied the withdrawal slips more carefully, noting the dates and amounts. Over 18 months, Amanda had systematically stolen nearly $50,000 from our grandparents' retirement savings. The money they had carefully saved over decades of working and sacrificing was gone, taken by their own granddaughter under the guise of helping them. "Grandma, did you authorize any of these withdrawals?" Her eyes filled with tears as she shook her head. "I thought Amanda was just helping me pay bills or manage my medications. She always said she was taking care of everything so I would not have to worry about financial details." I spent the next hour going through every transaction, documenting the pattern of theft that had been happening right under our family's noses. Amanda had not just been unemployed for 2 years. She had been systematically robbing our elderly grandparents while positioning herself as their helpful caregiver. But the theft was just the beginning of what I discovered that day. After leaving the assisted living facility, I stopped at my office and used my access to professional background check services to investigate Amanda's financial situation more thoroughly. What I found painted a picture of addiction and desperation that explained her increasingly desperate behavior. Amanda's credit reports showed massive debt across multiple categories. Credit cards maxed out at over $50,000. Personal loans from online lenders totaling another $30,000. But the most shocking discoveries came when I dug deeper into her spending patterns. Casino transaction records showed regular visits to 3 different gambling establishments over the past 2 years. Online poker sites had processed thousands of dollars in deposits from Amanda's accounts. Sports betting platforms showed losses that dwarfed any legitimate income she could have earned. Amanda had developed a serious gambling addiction, and she had been funding it by stealing from our grandparents while lying to our parents about her need for housing assistance. But the addiction had escalated beyond gambling. Prescription records that I obtained through a contact in the medical field revealed that Amanda had been doctor shopping, visiting multiple physicians to obtain painkillers and anxiety medications. The pattern suggested substance abuse alongside her gambling problems. Everything suddenly made sense. The house she wanted was not about stability or career development. She needed a large sum of money to pay off gambling debts and drug dealers. She needed to disappear from her current situation and start over somewhere her creditors could not find her. I called my parents and asked them to meet me at a neutral location to discuss what I had discovered. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our homes, and I spread the evidence across a corner table like a prosecutor presenting a case. "This is what Amanda has really been doing for the past 2 years," I said, showing them the bank statements from Grandma Dorothy's account. Mom's hand flew to her mouth as she realized what she was looking at. "She has been stealing from Mom and Dad? $50,000 over 18 months, I confirmed. "While telling you she needed money for housing, Dad studied the casino transaction records with growing horror. How did we not see this?" "Because she is an addict," I explained. "And addicts become very skilled at hiding their behavior and manipulating people who love them." Mom started crying as the full scope of Amanda's deception became clear. "We gave her access to our retirement money. We took out a second mortgage on our house. We pressured you to sell your cars, all to enable her gambling and drug addiction. The house she wanted was never about getting her life together," I continued. "She needed a large sum of cash to pay off dangerous people, and she was willing to destroy our entire family to get it." Dad leaned back in his chair, looking older than I had ever seen him. "What do we do now?" "First, we make sure Grandma and Grandpa are protected," I said. "I'll replace the money she stole from them. Then we get Amanda into real treatment, not just for gambling, but for the drug addiction too." "How can we help her if she does not want help?" Mom asked. "We stop enabling her destructive behavior," I replied. "We stop giving her money, stop making excuses for her choices, and stop trying to fix her problems for her." That evening, I drove back to Sunset Manor to share the news with my grandparents. They deserved to know the truth about what had happened to their savings, and they deserved to know that they would be financially secure again. Grandma Dorothy listened to my explanation with the quiet dignity she had maintained throughout her 83 years. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hand. "I hope Amanda can get the help she needs," she said simply. "But thank you for protecting your cars, Lincoln. If you had sold them to give her money, it would just have disappeared into her addictions, and you would have lost everything you worked for." Grandpa Frank nodded in agreement. "Your grandmother and I have been worried about Amanda for a long time. We just did not understand what we were seeing." As I drove home that night, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. Sad that my sister had fallen so far into addiction and criminal behavior. Sad that my parents had been manipulated into risking their financial security. Sad that our family had been torn apart by lies and desperation. But also relieved that the truth was finally out. Amanda's problems were not about housing or employment or family support. She needed professional treatment for addiction, and no amount of money from my car collection would have solved the underlying issues that were destroying her life. After Amanda completed a court-mandated 30-day rehabilitation program, I found myself cautiously optimistic about the possibility of rebuilding our relationship. She called me from the treatment facility during her final week, and for the first time in months, she sounded like the sister I remembered from better times. "Lincoln, I know I messed up everything," she said, her voice carrying a humility I had not heard since we were children. "I know saying sorry is not enough, but I want you to know that I understand what I did to you and to our family." "Are you getting the help you need?" I asked carefully. "I'm learning about addiction and how it changes the way you think," she replied. "I'm starting to see how I manipulated everyone who loved me to feed my gambling and drug habits." When Amanda was released from the facility, our parents organized a family meeting at their house to discuss how we could support her recovery without enabling her previous destructive patterns. She looked healthier than she had in years, and she spoke with a clarity that gave me genuine hope. "I want to make amends for what I did," Amanda told us. "Not just with words, but with actions that prove I'm serious about changing my life." I had been thinking about ways to help Amanda rebuild while maintaining healthy boundaries. During my sleepless nights after her arrest, I had come up with an idea that seemed perfect for someone trying to develop discipline and useful skills. "Amanda, would you be interested in learning automotive restoration?" I asked. "I have a project car that needs complete rebuilding, and it might give you something positive to focus on while you're figuring out your next steps." Her eyes lit up with genuine interest. "You would trust me with one of your cars?" Not one of my collection cars, I clarified. But I have a 1972 Camaro SS that I bought as a restoration project. It needs everything. Engine work, body repair, paint, interior. It's a perfect learning vehicle. Amanda's enthusiasm seemed authentic as I explained the project. The Camaro had been sitting in my garage for 3 years, waiting for me to find time to restore it properly. It would require months of dedicated work, learning new skills, and developing patience and attention to detail. I would love that, Amanda said. I need something constructive to do with my time, and learning a trade skill could help me find employment eventually. Over the next several weeks, Amanda surprised everyone with her dedication to the restoration project. She showed up at my garage every morning at 8 o'clock, ready to learn whatever I was willing to teach her. We started with basic tasks like removing interior components and cleaning decades of accumulated grease and dirt. This is harder than I expected, she admitted after spending an entire day just removing the old carpet and seat covers, but it feels good to work with my hands instead of just sitting around feeling sorry for myself. As the weeks progressed, Amanda demonstrated real aptitude for automotive work. She learned to use tools properly, followed safety procedures without being reminded, and asked thoughtful questions about how different systems work together. Her attendance at addiction support meetings remained perfect, and she seemed genuinely committed to sobriety. I'm starting to understand why you love these cars so much, she told me one afternoon as we worked on rebuilding the Camaro's carburetor. There's something satisfying about taking something broken and making it work perfectly again. I began to believe that Amanda had truly changed. She was learning valuable skills, staying sober, and contributing positively to our family relationships for the first time in years. Mom and Dad were cautiously optimistic about her progress, and even our grandparents expressed hope that she might finally be getting her life together. But my optimism was shattered 6 weeks into the restoration project when I received a phone call that revealed Amanda's recovery had been an elaborate performance. Jerry Martinez, who owned Classic Auto Sales downtown, called me on a Thursday afternoon with confusion in his voice. Lincoln, I had a young woman come in yesterday claiming she needed to sell a Camaro SS for family financial reasons. She had keys and seemed to know the car well, but something felt off about the whole transaction. My heart sank as I realized what had happened. What did this woman look like? About late 20s, brown hair. Said her name was Amanda. She seemed desperate to complete the sale quickly and was willing to accept much less than the car was worth. I drove straight to my garage, though I already knew what I would find. The restoration bay where we had been working on the Camaro stood empty, except for scattered tools and a note propped against my workbench. Lincoln, I'm sorry, but I needed the money. I'll pay you back when I can. The car was just sitting here anyway, so I figured you wouldn't miss it right away. I'm going through a difficult time and needed cash for an emergency. Amanda. I called Jerry immediately and confirmed that Amanda had sold the partially restored Camaro to him for $8,000, far below its actual value, even in damaged condition. She had forged my signature on the title transfer and used fake identification to complete the transaction. I can reverse the sale if you want to file a police report, Jerry offered. I suspected something was wrong, which is why I called you. But first I needed to find Amanda and understand what had driven her back to criminal behavior after weeks of apparent progress. I found her at a motel on the outskirts of town, registered under a fake name but driving our father's car. When I knocked on her door, she opened it with the hollow-eyed look of someone who had been using drugs for days. Where's the money from my car? I asked, without preamble. Amanda's recovery facade crumbled completely as she invited me into the dingy motel room. Empty prescription bottles littered the nightstand, and the smell of alcohol hung heavy in the air. I owed people money, she said, not bothering to lie anymore. Serious people who don't accept payment plans or sob stories about recovery programs. So you stole my car to pay drug dealers? It was just sitting there, she exploded. You have 14 other cars worth millions of dollars. That one stupid Camaro was not going to make or break you. I stared at my sister, realizing that her month in rehabilitation had not addressed the fundamental selfishness and entitlement that drove her addictive behaviors. She had learned to say the right words about recovery and responsibility, but underneath she remained the same person who believed the world owed her whatever she wanted. Amanda, you're sick, I said quietly. and I can't help you until you actually want help instead of just performing recovery to manipulate people into trusting you again. Don't lecture me about manipulation, she screamed. You manipulated our entire family by hiding your cars. You could have prevented all of this by just giving me the money I needed. I left her in that motel room and drove straight to the police station to file charges for vehicle theft. This time, I would not allow family loyalty to prevent consequences for Amanda's criminal behavior. But I also felt a deep sadness, because I realized that my sister was still drowning in addiction, and my attempts to throw her a lifeline had only enabled her to pull me deeper into her destructive patterns. At 3:17 in the morning on a Tuesday in November, my phone rang with the call that every family member of an addict dreads receiving. Amanda was in the emergency room at County General Hospital, and the doctor needed to speak with next of kin immediately. I threw on clothes and drove through empty streets to the hospital, my mind racing through worst-case scenarios. When I arrived at the emergency department, a tired-looking physician named Dr. Sarah Chen pulled me aside to explain Amanda's condition. Your sister was found unconscious in her motel room by the cleaning staff, she explained in the calm, professional tone that doctors use when delivering devastating news. She had overdosed on a combination of prescription painkillers and alcohol. We were able to stabilize her, but it was very close. I followed Dr. Chen to the intensive care unit, where Amanda lay unconscious with tubes and monitors surrounding her bed. She looked smaller and more fragile than I had ever seen her, and for the first time I truly understood that addiction might actually kill my sister. How bad is the organ damage? I asked, though I was not sure I wanted to hear the answer. Her liver is showing signs of stress from the alcohol and pharmaceutical abuse, Dr. Chen replied. Her respiratory system was severely depressed by the overdose. If she had not been found when she was, we might be having a very different conversation. I called my parents from the hospital waiting room, and they arrived within 20 minutes, looking as terrified as I felt. We sat together in uncomfortable plastic chairs, waiting for Amanda to regain consciousness, and wondering if we would get another chance to help her find recovery. When Amanda finally woke up 18 hours later, her reaction was completely different from anything I had seen before. Instead of anger or defensiveness or elaborate excuses, she looked around the ICU with genuine terror in her eyes. I almost died, she whispered, her voice hoarse from the breathing tube. I really almost died this time. Yes, you did, I said simply, because sugarcoating the reality would not help her understand the seriousness of her situation. Amanda started crying, but these tears carried a weight and authenticity that felt different from her previous emotional manipulations. Lincoln, I don't want to die. I don't want to keep living like this, but I don't know how to stop. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, Amanda took complete responsibility for her actions, without trying to blame anyone else or justify her choices. I stole your car to buy drugs, she said. I stole from Grandma and Grandpa to gamble. I manipulated Mom and Dad into risking their house to pay my debts. I hired criminals to steal your collection. Everything I did was wrong, and I did it because I'm an addict who was willing to destroy everyone who loved me to feed my addictions. Mom and Dad sat on opposite sides of Amanda's hospital bed, tears streaming down their faces as they heard their daughter speak honestly about her problems for the first time in years. We want to help you, Mom said carefully, but we don't know how to help without making things worse. I need real treatment, Amanda replied. Not 30 days in a program where I learned to say the right words while planning my next scheme. I need long-term residential treatment where I can't leave when things get difficult. After Amanda was medically stable, we began researching intensive addiction treatment programs that specialized in dual diagnosis patients with both substance abuse and gambling addictions. The programs were expensive and required minimum 6-month commitments, but Amanda insisted she was ready for serious treatment. But before Amanda could begin her recovery journey, my parents had their own confession to share. Lincoln, your father and I have been attending family support group meetings for 3 months, Mom said when we gathered at Amanda's bedside. We've been learning about how we enabled Amanda's addiction by always rescuing her from consequences. We wrote you a letter, Dad added, pulling out an envelope he had been carrying for weeks. We wanted to apologize for pressuring you to sell your cars and for not seeing how our enabling was hurting Amanda instead of helping her. The letter was 3 pages of heartfelt apology and self-reflection. My parents acknowledged that they had favored Amanda throughout our childhood, making excuses for her irresponsible behavior and protecting her from natural consequences that might have taught her important life lessons. We see now that demanding you sell your cars would have been the worst thing we could have done, Mom explained. It would have taught Amanda that she could manipulate her way out of any situation, no matter how badly she behaved. We're proud of you for setting boundaries, Dad added. Even when it meant standing up to us and risking our relationship. Amanda listened to our parents' apology with what appeared to be genuine remorse and understanding. You were trying to help me, she said, but I was so deep in addiction that I turned your love into a weapon against the whole family. Over the following weeks, Amanda entered a residential treatment facility that specialized in long-term recovery programs. This time, she committed to 6 months of inpatient treatment followed by a year of supervised transitional living. I know I have to rebuild trust with everyone, she told us during our first family therapy session at the treatment center. And I know that's going to take years of consistent actions, not just words. The family therapist helped us understand how addiction had affected all of our relationships and decision-making processes. We learned about healthy boundaries, enabling behaviors, and how to support someone's recovery without taking responsibility for their choices. Amanda's addiction manipulated all of you into unhealthy patterns, the therapist explained. Recovery will require changes from everyone, not just from Amanda. For the first time in years, I felt hopeful that our family might actually heal from the damage that addiction had caused. Not because Amanda was promising to change, but because she was finally taking responsibility for the harm she had caused and committing to long-term treatment that addressed the underlying issues driving her destructive behavior. 6 months later, I was detailing my Shelby Mustang in my newly reorganized garage when my phone chimed with a text message that made me stop polishing and smile genuinely for the first time in what felt like years. The message was from Amanda, and it included a photo that told a story of transformation I had hardly dared to hope for. She was standing in front of an automotive repair shop, wearing a blue mechanic's uniform with her name embroidered above the pocket, holding a wrench in one hand and giving a thumbs up with the other. Her smile looked genuine and healthy, and her eyes were clear and focused. The text message read, "Thank you for not giving up on me by giving in to me. 9 months sober today, and I finally found work that makes me proud of what I do with my hands." I immediately called the number she had included in her message, and Amanda answered on the second ring. "Lincoln, I was hoping you would call," she said, her voice carrying an energy and positivity I had not heard since we were teenagers. "I wanted to tell you about my job and thank you for everything you did to protect our family." Amanda explained that she had been working as an apprentice mechanic at Jerry's Automotive Repair for the past 2 months, learning electrical systems, brake repair, and diagnostic procedures under the supervision of an experienced master mechanic named Tom Rodriguez. "Tom is teaching me how to troubleshoot engine problems and rebuild transmissions," she said with genuine excitement. "I never thought I would enjoy working with my hands this much, but there's something really satisfying about fixing something that was broken." "How did you get interested in automotive work?" I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. "Those weeks we spent working on your Camaro were the first time I felt useful and productive in years," she admitted. "Even though I screwed up everything afterward, those skills stayed with me. When I was in treatment, I kept thinking about how peaceful it felt to focus on rebuilding something instead of tearing things down." I asked Amanda if I could visit her at work, and she eagerly agreed. The following Saturday, I drove out to Jerry's Automotive Repair, a small independent shop that specialized in older vehicles and custom restoration projects. Amanda greeted me in the service bay wearing safety glasses and work gloves, completely absorbed in diagnosing an electrical problem in a 1985 Ford pickup truck. She looked confident and competent, using a multimeter to test circuits while referring to wiring diagrams spread across her workbench. "Amanda has natural talent for this work," Tom Rodriguez told me as we watched her troubleshoot the truck's electrical system. "She asks good questions, pays attention to details, and treats every job like it matters." We've been talking about sponsoring her for formal automotive technician certification. After Amanda finished her diagnosis and explained the repair estimate to the truck's owner, she gave me a tour of the shop and introduced me to her coworkers. They clearly respected her skills and work ethic, treating her as a valued team member rather than someone who needed special consideration. I rent a small apartment about 10 minutes from here, Amanda told me as we walked around the neighborhood after her shift ended. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine, and I pay for it with money I earned honestly. Amanda's apartment was modest, but clean and organized. She had decorated it with photos of our family from better times, along with certificates from her treatment program and a small collection of automotive repair manuals. A journal sat open on her kitchen table, and she explained that she wrote in it every day as part of her recovery program. I write about what I'm grateful for, what challenges I faced that day, and what I learned about myself, she said. It helps me stay accountable and recognize when I'm falling into old thinking patterns. She showed me entries from recent weeks that demonstrated real insight into her past behavior and genuine commitment to making different choices going forward. The writing was honest and thoughtful, acknowledging mistakes without wallowing in self-pity or making excuses. Lincoln, I need to ask you something, Amanda said as we sat on her small couch sharing coffee and homemade cookies. Would you be willing to let me see your car collection properly? Not to ask for anything, but just to understand what I almost destroyed when I was at my worst. The next weekend, I brought Amanda to the storage facility where Marcus had been protecting my automobiles for nearly a year. She walked quietly through the climate-controlled bays, examining each vehicle with respect and genuine appreciation. I never really looked at them before, she said as she studied the engine bay of my McLaren. I just saw dollar signs. But these are incredible machines, and I can see how much care you put into maintaining them. Each one represents years of saving and planning, I explained. But more than that, they represent my passion for automotive engineering and craftsmanship. Amanda nodded thoughtfully. I'm starting to understand the difference between wanting something and appreciating something. For most of my life, I wanted things because I thought they would make me happy or solve my problems. But you appreciate these cars because you understand their value beyond just money. As we walked through the storage facility, Amanda asked thoughtful questions about engine specifications, restoration techniques, and automotive history. Her knowledge from working at the repair shop allowed her to appreciate technical details that she would have completely missed during her addiction. Would you be interested in learning restoration work? I asked carefully. I mean really learning it, not as therapy or family bonding, but as a skilled trade that could become a career. Amanda's eyes lit up with genuine interest. I would love that. Tom has been encouraging me to specialize in classic car restoration because there's good money in it and not many people have the skills. It would mean starting over with your trust, I said honestly. After what happened with the Camaro, I would need to see consistent, responsible behavior over time. I understand, Amanda replied. I know I have to earn back your trust through actions, not promises. But if you're willing to give me another chance eventually, I promise I'll prove that I've really changed this time. Our parents had also been attending family support group meetings and working with their own therapist to understand how their enabling behaviors had contributed to Amanda's addiction. When we gathered for our first family dinner in over a year, the dynamics felt completely different from our previous interactions. We've learned that helping someone sometimes means letting them experience the natural consequences of their choices, Mom said as we sat around their dining room table sharing a meal Amanda had cooked herself. We spent so many years protecting Amanda from discomfort that we never gave her the opportunity to develop strength and resilience. Dad nodded in agreement. We're proud of both of you for handling this crisis with maturity and integrity. Amanda for taking responsibility and getting help, and Lincoln for maintaining boundaries even when it was difficult. Amanda had also begun the process of making financial amends to our grandparents. She had arranged a payment plan to gradually repay the money she had stolen, contributing a portion of every paycheck toward restoring their retirement savings. I can't undo the harm I caused, Amanda told Grandma Dorothy and Grandpa Frank during a family visit to their assisted living facility. But I can commit to making things right over time, and I can promise that I'll never betray your trust again. Our grandparents, with the wisdom that comes from decades of life experience, welcomed Amanda back into their lives while maintaining appropriate caution about financial matters. As the months passed, Amanda continued to demonstrate consistent, responsible behavior. She maintained perfect attendance at work, completed additional training certifications, and remained active in her recovery support groups. Most importantly, she stopped asking for special consideration or making excuses when things became challenging. I'm learning that recovery is not just about stopping destructive behaviors, she told me during one of our regular coffee meetings. It's about developing a completely different relationship with discomfort, disappointment, and responsibility. 1 year after Amanda's overdose, I made a decision that surprised even myself. I offered her the opportunity to collaborate with me on restoring a 1969 Dodge Charger that I had recently acquired. This would be a legitimate business partnership, with Amanda contributing labor and learning while I provided materials and expertise. I want to be very clear about the terms, I told her as we examined the Charger in my garage. This is not family charity. This is a business arrangement where you'll be held to professional standards and expected to contribute real value. I wouldn't want it any other way, Amanda replied. I need to prove that I can be trusted as a business partner, not just forgiven as a sister. Working together on the Charger restoration gave us the opportunity to rebuild our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect and shared interests, rather than family obligation and guilt. Amanda's skills had improved dramatically during her months at the repair shop, and she brought valuable knowledge about modern diagnostic techniques to complement my expertise with classic vehicles. You know what's different this time? Amanda asked as we worked together on rebuilding the Charger's suspension system. I'm not constantly thinking about what I can get from this situation. I'm just enjoying the work and learning new skills. As I watched my sister carefully torque suspension bolts to precise specifications while explaining the procedure to ensure I knew she understood it correctly, I realized that she had truly transformed from the desperate, manipulative person who had almost destroyed our family. The Amanda working beside me was someone who took pride in doing quality work, who admitted when she did not know something and asked for instruction, who showed up consistently and contributed value without expecting special recognition. 6 months later, Amanda sent me another photo that captured the depth of her transformation. She was standing next to the completed Charger restoration, which we had just delivered to its new owner. Her expression showed the quiet satisfaction that comes from completing difficult work to the highest standards. But the most meaningful part of the photo was what she was holding: a check, representing her share of the restoration profit. Money she had earned through skilled labor and professional commitment. "This is the first money I've earned that I can feel proud of," she wrote in the accompanying message. "Thank you for giving me the chance to learn that I'm capable of creating value instead of just taking it." Looking back on that devastating morning when my parents first demanded I sell my car collection, I can see that their ultimatum was actually a gift in disguise. By refusing to enable Amanda's addiction with money from my automobiles, I forced our entire family to confront the real problems that were destroying us. If I had sold my cars and given Amanda the money she demanded, she would likely be dead today. The funds would have disappeared into gambling debts and drug purchases, and she never would have been forced to face the consequences that ultimately led to her recovery. My parents learned that true love sometimes means allowing people to fail so they can develop the strength to succeed. Amanda learned that she was capable of building a life based on honest work and genuine achievement, and I learned that protecting your boundaries is not selfishness when those boundaries prevent you from enabling someone's self-destruction. Today, Amanda owns her own classic car restoration business, specializing in electrical system upgrades for vintage vehicles. She employs 2 apprentice mechanics and has a 6-month waiting list for restoration projects. More importantly, she has maintained her sobriety for over 3 years and built a life she can be genuinely proud of. Our family gatherings now focus on celebrating genuine achievements and supporting each other's growth, rather than managing crises and enabling destructive behavior. We learned that healthy families are built on mutual respect and individual responsibility, not guilt, manipulation, and emotional blackmail. The cars that Amanda once saw as obstacles to her happiness became the catalyst for her transformation into someone capable of creating her own success through skill, dedication, and integrity. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to save them from the consequences that will teach them how to save themselves. As I finish telling you this story, I want to ask you something that has been on my mind as I reflect on everything our family went through. Have you ever faced a situation where helping someone you love actually made their problems worse? Have you had to choose between giving someone what they demanded and protecting what you worked hard to build? I would love to hear about your experiences with setting boundaries in difficult family situations. Your insights might help someone else who is struggling with similar decisions. Thank you for listening to my story and for being part of a community where we can share these challenging experiences. I hope that sharing what we learned about addiction, enabling, and healthy family relationships might help you or someone you care about navigate their own difficult situations. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button to help others find it when they need it most. Consider subscribing for more real-life stories about overcoming family challenges and building healthier relationships. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing about our journey from crisis to healing, please share this story with them. May you find the wisdom to know when helping hurts and the courage to love people enough to let them grow strong through facing their own challenges.